Let's start with this. So out of Wimborne today, it can be hard to encourage adults to talk about their feelings, let alone children. But that is the aim of a new series of books written by a woman from Wimborne. The books are called the Repairables, and they focus on getting children to empathise with the characters in them and to identify difficult feelings in their own lives. An author, Lisa Everett, has donated 100 copies to Dorset primary schools and wants them to be available in all primary schools across the county and the country. And I'm thrilled to say that Lisa joins me on the line now. Lisa, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
No, very nice to have you there. It's a nice story, this. I mean, more than nice, actually. What was it about your own life experiences that made you want to do something like this to help kids with their mental health?
Okay, well, I ran my own day nursery for 18 years, and then I went and retrained and became a counsellor. And I worked for 5 years in a school counselling children with behaviour difficulties and learning difficulties. And I also worked at Hope Housing, which is a charity that houses the homeless in Bournemouth. And all my work that I was doing inspired me to write the stories, develop the characters, and I would take them into the counselling room with the children, because sometimes it was hard to keep a child in the room with behaviour problems. So I would bring in the story, and obviously storytelling is a great thing. Kids love it.
Yeah.
And they would identify with the characters, and then they would start to stay in the room while they talk about the story. And then they were able to identify their own feelings with the characters. And I thought, God, this is a really valuable tool. So I developed the stories. So there's 7 stories under the collection of the Repairables, a bit like the Mr. Men collection. And and that's how it all began, really.
Okay. And I mean, what is the hope with this? I might be skipping to the end of the story here a little bit, but what is the hope with this? You talk about using this as a tool within your counselling sessions. Are books in and of themselves powerful enough to help children open up about mental health? I mean, or do they need to be used in a kind of setting where there is an adult to help them through this experience?
Yeah, well, it isn't just for the counselling, because obviously that inspired me to do it.
Yeah.
I just feel that children need to, it's something they can identify with. So if it's for 6 to 9 year olds, so they can read the books themselves, or they can obviously read the book with a caregiver. And at the back of the books, there's a question page for discussion with the caregiver that's reading it. And it's just to help children really actually talk about their feelings. It's building on resilience in those early years, which I think is really important. It's educating them. It's a preventative. I work with adults that never had that opportunity, and it sent them down roads that very difficult, challenging roads, and they've never really talked about their feelings until they got into their 40s or their 50s.
Yeah.
But I think the Repairable collection would just be a valuable tool in schools that children can access, and then they can relate to the characters and think, well, it's okay that I had that feeling, or I felt like that or thought like that, because the character in the book.
It can be just really helpful modelling as well. If the author's done it right. I mean, so for context, the listeners will know this. I have a 4-year-old and twin 2-year-olds. And, I know. And if you find yourself sometimes reading books to them that they have asked for, and you're like, oh, this person, I'm not naming any names here, Peppa Pig, is not behaving really how you would like your child to. And I guess similarly with the Repairables, so you might have to run us through these. You say that they're like the Mr. Men, but so far it's Naughty Nick, Jess and Gerald and the Green-Eyed Monster, Adam and the Bear with the Sore Head. And the idea then is that these are characters that might be experiencing emotions that young people themselves might be having and struggling with.
Yeah, and Naughty Nick is obviously showing children that actually why, judging somebody on their behaviours, what's actually really going on for Naughty Nick. The story sort of as it goes along, and he gets in a bit of a bad way with his naughtiness, and then how he turns it all around and what was lacking in Naughty Nick that made him behave in those ways. And I think with bullying and all those sort of things in schools, it's just educating the child that actually if someone's misbehaving or being very difficult, maybe there's something going on behind that. It's just giving children that self-awareness from a very early age. And I think I mean, I'm quite passionate about personal development, and I do that in my job. I run personal development twice a week in my job. But I think it's that sort of stuff is really valuable. And I'd love to be going into schools and doing personal development, but these books would just encourage that talking and that discussion that maybe you don't really talk about, or, you know, and also educates the caregiver as well, because there's sort of little hints to the caregiver that, you know, that might make them stop and think, actually, you know, about the way they parent or the way they come across. So I just think.
So the plan with this then now is you have, and set me straight if I'm wrong here, you have 3 of the books published, you've got 4 in your head left to go, you need to get those published, and you want to try and get as many of them as possible out to, first of all, Dorset schools and then schools nationwide. So 100 Dorset schools have the 3 that have been published so far. And this is all very much something that you've had support with, and you probably need more support with, right?
Definitely, yeah. A very good friend of mine, she did the 3 Peak Challenge, Chantal, and she kindly donated all the money to the printers so I was able to get them into 100 schools in Dorset. I mean, obviously my aim would be for every school in the UK, so every child has access to the books. But obviously that's a lovely dream I have. Well,
you never know. You never know who's listening. You never know what deep pockets might be out there. There was a lovely story a few years ago about a book called The Lost Words, about these words that were sort of disappearing from our language relating to nature, and that kind of that ended up, I think, getting distributed to every school in Britain because of some wealthy benefactor. And I see here you've had, is it Lord Westbury who's helped you out with one of these books?
Yeah, Stephen Young, the Lord of Westbury. It was a chance meeting, and we just started talking about my work and what I was doing. I was writing for young children, and he looked at my work and he loved it. He said, "This is so real." I mean, he'd had a recent experience that made him look at stuff, and he said, "This is amazing. I want to fund the first book and get you going." So he funded Naughty Nick. That was really good. And the second book was funded through crowdfunding, and the third book was funded by 2 local businessmen in Wimborne.
Well, look, good luck with it. If anyone listening wants to get involved, we can put them in touch with you. I will leave it there for now, Lisa, and we'll follow your story as it continues, your stories as they continue, I suppose. Lisa Everett there, children's author, behind this series called The Repairables. Live with us is Friday morning. First, let's return to this story out of Wimborne, and the author who has come up with a series of books designed to help children talk about their mental health. The series of books is called The Repairables. It focuses on getting children to empathise with these characters. In so far, 3 published books, with 4 more in the brain of Lisa Everett, and she has donated copies of those books to 100 Dorset primary schools already. And she joined me on the show earlier to tell me where the ideas came from.
I ran my own day nursery for 18 years, and then I went and retrained and became a counsellor. And I worked for 5 years in a school counselling children with behaviour difficulties and learning difficulties. And I also worked at Hope Housing, which is a charity that houses the homeless in Bournemouth. And all my work that I was doing inspired me to write the stories and develop the characters. And I would take them into the counselling room with the children, because sometimes it was hard to keep a child in the room with behaviour problems. So I would bring in the story, and obviously storytelling is a great thing. Kids love it.
Yeah.
And they would identify with the characters, and then they would start to stay in the room while they talk about the story. And then they were able to identify their own feelings with the characters.
That's Lisa from Wimborne talking to us in the last hour. Glynn Hannam is a parent from Poole who has read the books with his children. Glynn, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, really well, thanks. Appreciate you coming on to talk with us about this. So, well, tell me a little bit about how The Repairables went down in your house.
So I received the books from Lisa, which are excellent, and started reading through them with the kids. We went through a couple of the books. My son actually started reading Naughty Nick, and as we were going through it, he was reading the story, and at the end of it, he said, I think I've got these problems because I'm being bullied at school. I think this is what I'm doing. And he didn't realise that he was lashing out, being aggressive and being just being a naughty kid. but he didn't understand why. He had no idea why or what the feelings were or how he was going to express it. So we had a good chat after that. And it really helped his mental health and realised, because he'd been suppressing it for a few months. Until he read this book, he didn't understand about these issues.
How old was he at the time, Glynn?
He was about 6 or 7 at the time.
Gosh. That must be quite a thing as a dad to kind of have that moment with your son sparked off by something as simple as a book.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we didn't know. We had no idea. Nothing said by the school, nothing said by him. He just started sort of playing up and being a little bit naughty and misbehaving. And we just thought maybe it's something he's going through. But until he read the book, he didn't realise that the feeling he had was the anger from him being bullied and expressing it in his own way like that.
Wow.
So it really gave him some great stuff. I mean, it gives you the tools he got from reading these books to cope with it and how to deal with it. It's just, they helped him loads. Otherwise, I believe without things like these books that Lisa's written and released, some children won't express their feelings. They will just suppress these issues that they have because they don't understand what the feeling is. You know, some children have never been through this sort of issue and they don't know what it is, so they just keep suppressing it. And if they keep doing that till they're older, it can cause more issues.
You've been kind enough to send us a little clip, which is lovely. This is a bit of Glynn's daughter, Elsie Grace, reading some of that book that he referenced there, which helped his son so much. So the book is called Naughty Nick.
As Naughty Nick grew up, he developed a hard outer shell. He became rough and tough, and he mixed with the bad boys. This hard outer shell was like a suit of armour to protect him, so nobody could get close to him and hurt him.
You must, Glynn, tell Elsie, well done from us. That's a lovely thing. What's the situation now then with your son? I mean, having had this breakthrough as a result of the book, have you been able to, I don't know, work with the school and to try and address some of, well, his anger issues and I guess also significantly the bullying that led him there?
Yes, so after he had told us what was going on through reading the book and everything, we had a nice chat with him, explained to him that if you feel these feelings again or any other kind of feeling you're not sure, you can talk to us. Because he didn't feel like he could. He wasn't sure what was going on. He didn't want the other person to get in trouble or himself to get in trouble. So with reading the book and realising that he can share these issues and more people can deal with it, and he grew with the tools to be able to deal with all these issues, it really helps him. And now he tells us everything. If something happens at school and he's a bit moody, upset or sad, he will come straight to us and tell us, which is a massive outlet for him.
Yeah,
it's the same with the other kids because they, of course, are younger than him. They've grown up the same way and realise that they can do it because he's told them, no, just speak to mum or speak to dad, and they can help you.
What a thing!
Instead of suppressing it and causing more issues.
Look, Glynn, it's lovely to talk to you. Just as a final thought, Lisa was on earlier on. She said on this sort of mission to get the rest of these books that are kind of in her head published and get them spread out to other Dorset schools and maybe schools further afield. What would you say about that mission?
I'd say it's absolutely brilliant, and she could do as much support as she can because these books can save children's lives and prevent things like, adolescent suicide and other things like self-harm, because just a little tiny bit of reading, realising there is support out there and these issues aren't just what they're experiencing, can really help them.
Great to talk to you this morning. Glynn Hannam there from Poole, who used the books that Lisa wrote with his children. They're called The Repairables. If you'd like to hear that full conversation that we had with the author Lisa Everett, she spoke to us